This morning didn't feel very much like Easter to me. I was with a Hardy group just across the street here at Summerdine Brethren Church for their sunrise service. 7 a.m., it was 45 degrees, and to sit one's posterior on those metal chairs under that condition is a rude awakening. Easter should be warm. We follow a liturgical calendar that comes out of the Western Church from people who worship in this hemisphere. A calendar that follows the natural progression of the 4 seasons of the year as we know it. Back in the fall, on the first Sunday of November, we celebrate All Saints' Day, where we remember those who have died within the previous year. That's the time of the year that the leaves are changing on the trees, and the grass is beginning to turn brown, and all around us, it feels like the world is beginning to die before laying in a tomb throughout all of winter. And then the spring comes, the weather warms up, the songs of birds come back to the air. There's new life, there's greenery, and there are flowers. And it very easily falls into how we have merged this with the gospel narrative. Thinking of Jesus dying and the time of the year that it's still cold in winter when we begin Lent. And then the resurrection comes when it's Easter time, when it is warm and when there's new vegetation, and the images of new life are surrounding us. It's very natural to us. But what about our brothers and sisters in the Christian faith who are worshiping on this Easter Sunday in Argentina? In that part of the world, it's fall. It's cold. The leaves have changed on the trees. What do people in the southern hemisphere do at this time of year when they celebrate Easter? Well, they have adapted a different way of looking at Easter. And that is that Easter and the resurrection is unnatural. It does not follow the natural laws of nature as you and I experience it. What was dead remains dead. For them to gather on a cold and dreary day and celebrate Easter is to recognize that the resurrection is something miraculous that only comes from God, where God has reordered the laws of nature by what He's done through Jesus Christ. Christ, who has died this horrible death, been buried in a borrowed tomb, and rose again, completely rewriting the rules of nature. Our gospel account reflects how unnatural the resurrection is. Luke has gone to great efforts to defend the credibility of the women who have gone to the tomb. Luke is careful to let us know they have been there every step of the way. They were there as witnesses of the crucifixion. They saw what happened to Jesus. They heard the crowds and their jeers and taunts. They followed Joseph of Arimathea and the caravan that took Jesus' body off the cross. And they saw him laid in the tomb, and the stone was rolled in front of it. And being good, observant Jews, they did no work on the Sabbath day, which for them began on Friday night and continued into the next evening. So now, on the first day of the week and the first available chance, they are bringing the spices and the ointments, and they're coming back there to the tomb. And that is where they see the stone is rolled away. And 2 angels greet them and remind them of not only what Jesus said, but how Jesus interpreted the Scriptures in light of what was going to happen to him. And then the women return, and they tell all of the disciples who have gathered there what's happened. And the disciples don't believe them. Peter has to go check it out for themselves. All the others just decide this is some fanciful tale. It's too unbelievable. And we shouldn't be too hard on them, because you and I would have trouble believing it too. The resurrection does not line up with life as you and I have known it. And so, in order to receive this gospel passage, we realize that this passage was not written for that first generation of Christians, but it was written for subsequent generations. Mary and Joanna and Peter, their grandchildren would have been the first to hear this gospel testimony read to them. In order for them to take this testimony as a reality, and in order for you and I to do the same, it requires a little bit of faith. It requires looking at this particular text, reflecting on the testimony offered here, and taking a chance that this is in fact true, that it is highly unbelievable. It is not like anything we've ever witnessed, but there's something within this that says God has done something truly unique and something that involves us as well. It involves being able to look at this and take on faith, yes, this did happen. It was brutal and it was terrible, but it was done to save you and me and all of humanity. And God rewrote the ways of nature in ways that never have been before. And what happened here is just the first part of the tale that will ultimately include all of us. It requires a little bit of faith to be able to step out and profess that for the first time. John Wesley, our denomination's founder, believed that there were different aspects of faith. There's the initial faith where we step out and profess to believe something that seems so hard to believe. But once we are willing to do that, God then gives us the gift of faith. The gift of faith that helps us internalize this message, that transforms us, that makes us to realize and appreciate that all we have done that we so deeply regret can be undone. All of the terrible things that we and others have done in the world can be undone through that. I can overcome my own sinfulness, and even mortality will not have the last word on me. This is a much greater faith. This is a faith that overpowers the small faith with which we initially came. This is the gift of faith that God gives us, that fills us up, that changes our lives forever, the way it changed the first disciples. This is the kind of faith that makes the empty tomb real for us, as if we are there with those disciples experiencing it. Once we have received this kind of faith from God, then we know what Easter feels like. Not out there, but in here. Amen.